So welcome to episode 1 of the Training Truth podcast, where my beautiful wife Bethany and I bring you the truth about training. In these podcasts, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of have like an overarching topic, and then we're going to unpack that topic with further questions. Bethany's going to be the host, so she's going to be asking the questions. Let's get after it.
So topic that we're going to talk about today is being a beginner, starting working out with your fitness journey. Like, where do you even start? So I guess question number 1 would be, what is a common misconception when it becomes or when it's with working out, starting off?
So I think that probably the biggest misconception is that people tend to gravitate towards extremes, right? So it's like when they start, they're like, I need to have this extreme diet that I'm on 100%, and I need to have this extreme workout plan, and that needs to be 100%. And so they're trying to cram this like extreme lifestyle change into their life that they have never done before. And so, and the reason they do that is because that's what's marketed to us, right? It's like, what's marketed is like, if you do this, if you do this extreme thing, you're going to make these massive changes. And what I would say to people is like, don't buy the marketing hype. Can that work? Yeah, it can work. But the thing is like, you also have to figure out what's adherable and what's livable. Because ultimately, over like the arc of your training journey, getting from where you're at to where you want to be, the most important thing is adherence. And so what people tend to get wrong is they think that I need to do this sexy thing, or I need to do what this influencer says, or what this company says in order to actually achieve my goals. And the thing is most of the time it's just not adherable. And so the number one thing that I always tell people is like, whether it's a diet, whether it's training, whether it's kind of like fitness lifestyle stuff, you want to figure out what are the boundaries of what you can adhere to. That's the most important thing, because the most important thing to reach your goal is adherence over time. It's like bouts over time in the gym. And so it doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be extreme, especially if you're a beginner, because the goal is just to build habituation, right? And so what do I mean by habituation? It's like, I just want someone to start going to the gym and start being mindful of their food choices. Like, they don't have to do keto or carnivore or like some crazy diet. I just want them to be mindful of their food choices, pick some whole foods, and consistently implement that into their life. And as they do that, then it will just become part of what they do every day. And then once it's habituable, then you can start pushing on kind of the boundaries of what's more extreme. Until then, I think that's what drives most people off track, because they're like, well, I didn't eat 100% of X diet. And so I get discouraged by that and they fall off track. And so it's much more livable to kind of live in the moderation zone, especially in the beginning.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are perfectionists, to where that's like hard right off the bat. Like, if you don't really know, then you like try and go super extreme to try and like copy exactly what some influencer, some person is doing. And I think, then you just fall off the wagon a lot quicker. It's just hard to stick to something that's that extreme.
Well, and I would like if you guys, like, a good analogy is like, you're not going to go start playing basketball and shooting basketball baskets and do a pro level schedule, right? You're not going to just like, oh, I'm going to pick up basketball and now I'm going to train for 4 or 5 hours a day shooting baskets, and expect yourself with your busy life where you're not getting paid to do this thing to stick with it. But that's what a lot of people are doing with their fitness. Like, they're like, oh, this top pro or this top influencer who literally gets paid to look good and coach people, this is what they do, and so this must be what has to be done. And the thing is if you were to like rewind their life and look back in the beginning, what they actually did, it's usually pretty moderate. Like, they built habituation first, and then they built on top of that. So that's what I would say.
I also, at least for myself, like starting off, I mean, I know we argued about this a million times, it's like targeted fat loss. I think that's a huge misconception when it comes to like starting off at the gym. Like, I just refuse to believe you for like
that's true.
the longest time about it. But like, I don't know, like, why is that not a thing then?
Yeah. So what she's talking about is like, let's say you have some body fat that you want to lose, right? And you have body fat like in your gut that you want to lose, or you have some on your thighs that you want to lose. Like, there's kind of this misconception that's been pushed that you can target body fat loss, meaning like you can just lose it in your gut by doing abs, or you can just lose it in your legs by doing cardio, or you can just lose it off your arms if you lift your arms and do more like exercises of your arms. And the thing is, that's just not how the body physiologically works, because it's not going to respond to like the type of exercise you do and be like, oh, I'm going to go up here and start breaking down these fat molecules for energy for that area. Like, it just goes to your entire body and breaks down fat molecules. And there's not like a huge, like a really like super easy way to describe it, other than your body just loses fat where it wants to. And so what I think people also should know with that is that you lose fat like in an order. And sometimes this is frustrating, right? It's like, because usually where people want to lose fat is the last place that it comes off. And that it seems to be that wherever you put on fat first is the last place it comes off. And so if you tend to put on fat like in your love handles or your gut or your thighs or that area that like is really bothering you, just stick it, like you're gonna have to stick it in, because you can't make it come off faster in that area. Like it's probably one of the last places it's gonna go. And so if you're in a deficit, just continue on with the deficit and eventually it will come off. But that is frustrating, man. I totally wish I could like slap on one of those waist trainers or whatever and just like magically lose fat around my stomach. And so there is some like, once again, marketing misconception and in some of the products, like lose 30 pounds of belly fat, or lose fat around your core by putting on this thing around your stomach and rubbing some cream on there, and that's going to cause you to lose body fat, and that's not actually true. And so there's a lot of like scams that take advantage and prey on people's desires, right? Because that's marketing. Marketing's like, I want to figure out what these people want, and then I want to sell them the dream. And the problem is that that's not real. And so what's happening, just for those of you, if you may have tried it and you're like, but I do see a difference immediately after, what's happening like in those like waist wrap things, for example, or the creams, is you're just losing intracellular water. So like your cells store water, and when you put those transdermal creams on and you put a thing, like you sweat around there, you're gonna lose some water in those cells. And so temporarily they're gonna shrink, but as soon as you drink water, your body's gonna store water right back in those cells. So that's not real, basically.
Yeah, unfortunately. Long argument. For us. And then I feel like another one is body comp, even though I didn't know it was called body comp, or recomp. I still don't know. But I think that it was confusing, because I was like, no, I can definitely like lose fat, but also like put on muscle, like you're not gonna tell me. And that was another months and months long argument that I refused to give up for the longest time. I keep going back to like the same thing, where it's like you're being marketed to, okay? And it's like the job of marketers is to sell you. And the way to sell you is create like emotional agitation, right? I don't feel good about the way that I look, and then sell you like a dream that's typically beyond reach. And this is part of what the body recomp kind of like movement is. And so here's what I always tell people. It's like you can do body recomp, which is losing body fat and building muscle at the same time, efficiently, right? For maybe like 3 months, maybe a little bit longer, as a beginner, meaning you haven't ever trained before and you started training again, or you've taken years off training and then you started training again. You're gonna do it efficiently for a little while, but it has like a very short shelf life, and that your body's not gonna keep responding that way. And so what I always tell people is this kind of like line, and it's kind of like cliche now for me, but it's like body recomp is the slowest way to never reach your dream physique, because you don't have enough stored energy typically on most people to take all of that fat and convert it into glucose, and that go towards nutrition in order to build muscle. It's just very slow. And so most people, at least in Western society, want what they want immediately, and they think body recomp is the way to get there like efficiently, and that's just not the truth. And there's some studies out there that say that it's possible, right? And so I'm not arguing that it's not possible. What I'm arguing is that it's the least efficient way to do it, and it has like a cap to where you're probably not, 99.9% of you are not going to build your dream physique doing body recomp. Like it's just not going to happen unless you're on enhancers, right? Or you're a beginner, right? And it's going to be efficient in the beginning. And the real reason behind that is because your body wants to stay in homeostasis, meaning it doesn't want to change. Like it takes a lot of stimulus to get a body to change because it doesn't want to. And that's like a survival mechanism, right? It's like if it can stay in homeostasis and kind of stay at the set point, it doesn't require a lot of energy. It doesn't require a lot of output to do that. But in order to do body recomp, not only are you giving your body a demand to lose fat, which is a metabolic process that takes energy, but also build muscle at the same time on not very many calories. And so that's not like, your body doesn't really like doing that. And that's why it's so slow, and it has like a shelf, like to where you're gonna do it for a while and then it's gonna be really slow. And the most common thing that I see with this is like, people are so sold on the idea because they've been influenced by the fitness industry and these social media influencers into how possible it is, that they're like, well, I'll be patient. And I have to laugh because it's like,
but you won't just eat in a caloric deficit for 3 months. So it's like, if you can't do that, then you're not going to stick with recomp, which means you need to track your calorie intake like to the T every single day. You cannot miss tracking, and you probably need to use enhancers, and you need to be training very intensely, consistently in order to get a mediocre result. And so if you want to add muscle, you need to be in a caloric surplus, because you can't synthesize or build muscle from nothing. Like,
yeah.
And this is, I've done like a video on this before, but it's like, it comes down to like the conservation of mass. Like, you can't build something from nothing, right? It's like, I can't build this table from no wood. I have to have wood to build a table from. And so in the bodybuilding area, where it's like you're trying to build muscle, it's like the raw materials instead of wood for this table is macronutrients, it's food, right? And then when you take that food and all the macronutrients and you put them together, then you can build muscle tissue, right? But you can't do that effectively without the raw materials.
Yeah.
And the same thing with losing weight. It's just like, if you're eating at maintenance calories or slightly below maintenance calories, what I often see, the reason people aren't actually losing weight, and this ties right into the body recomp thing, and why it's so slow, is because it's very easy to blow out your diet and to accidentally end up in a surplus. Like, where it's like, I'm eating, let's say your body recomp calorie amount is you need to eat 2,400 calories every day, and then you go out for brunch one day on Saturday and you have like, I don't know, chicken fried steak or whatever, and that's like a 1,500 calorie meal right there. You're now in a surplus, and so you're not going to lose weight that week. And so it's much more efficient to focus on losing body fat and get lean first, and then focus on building muscle afterwards by being in a surplus.
Yeah, picking a side.
Yeah, pick a side.
Yeah.
That's a long way to explain it, but that is what's really going on. Like, your body needs more of a stimulus, right? So you're giving it a training stimulus either way, but it needs a stimulus to build tissue, which is the additional calories, right? Because you can't synthesize something from nothing, table example, right? Or you need to give it a big enough stimulus to convince it to strip off body fat, because that's a metabolic process too, and that stimulus is caloric deficit.
Yeah, which makes sense. Going off of like, everyone's trying to sell you something, how do you pick, or like, how do you know who to follow and who to not follow?
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially on social media, like, and especially for women, I feel like, because there's so many like girls who, I don't know, have a seemingly great body and they try and sell you whatever it is. Like, how do you choose who to pick, to follow and not follow? Or
So I would say one of the big tells of like whether or not someone's going to be authentic in teaching you, and whether or not they're really believe what they say, is are they what I call gatekeeping information, which means like, are they giving you the full story on how to change your physique for free? Because if they're not, that means they're gatekeeping. And this is what a lot of the body recomp people are doing. They're like touting body recomp and what they do, and then people try to do it and they don't get results. But behind the scenes, they're doing enhancement, or behind the scenes, they're actually cutting, or behind the scenes, they're actually in a caloric surplus. And then when people get frustrated that they can't make the results, then they go buy a plane from them, because they're like, well, they must have the magic secret. And so you want to find like, are people gatekeeping you? Are they like telling you, half of the information but not giving you the other half? That's an indicator that that's someone who wants to purely sell you. They're on here for purely profit. They're doing social media for purely profit. They're not doing it to actually help people. And in that instance, you kind of get into manipulation to some extent, right? As for the female fitness industry, the most common thing I see is, like ladies who are born with great glutes. They just genetically have great glutes, and because of that, and they start working out for like 3 to 6 months, and their great glutes are still there. Now all of a sudden they're a coach, they're a trainer, they're whatever. But and they're on, they're obviously like on TikTok and Instagram or like social media, and they're flaunting their genetic glutes. And people are like, oh my gosh, I don't have glutes like that. Like, I want to be able to do that. And they're trying to sell you on something that they had no role in developing. And so what I always tell like the ladies is like, if you want to follow like a female fitness influencer, you want to find someone who has before and after pictures that are legit. And by legit, it's like the same angle, right? Because angles play a role in social media. It's like one angle, they're like pushing their gut out and like pulling their butt in, doing like frog butt thing to make their butt look flatter. And then the next angle, they have their hand on their hip and they're like shoving their butt in the camera. And it's like, that's an angle game. How much gains did they actually make? And so if you're going to do that, you want to make sure that they have they've shown marked progress, like actual progress on their glute development, leg development, physical development without angles. And as far as like, if you look, a lot of ladies want to build their glutes, obviously. So as far as like glute development, you want to look for someone who doesn't just have glute development, right? Because there's a lot of like ladies running around out here with great butts that didn't do anything, right?
Yeah,
it's
I
like,
think that's a good point.
Yeah, it's like, well, like you were like that. It's like you always had a great glutes, but you're like quads and your hamstrings were a little underdeveloped, right? And so like you very easily could just get on social media, flaunt your butt before you've even trained and sell plans, because everybody's like, oh my gosh, look at your glutes, right? And that's what a lot of them are doing. So you want to see someone that has great glutes, but they also have other muscles developed too. So like, do they have developed quads, right? Do they have developed hamstrings? Like one easy tell is like, they have this nice glute and then their hamstrings are just bored flat. That's probably genetics, like because people who build glutes have protruding their hamstrings are developed. And so those are kind of like some telltale signs that you can look for. And so it's like, just to kind of summarize, it's like look for training or like physique progression, right? Without angles, like same angles, physique progression. And then look for the kind of half truths. Like, are they putting out a video and they're like giving you a half truth and leaving you in question on the other side? That's probably someone who's just marketing to you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
jumping to like, if I like want to start working out at the gym, like where do I start with like, do I know, like, should I do strength training or should I start with cardio, or like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to like gain weight, bulk, and like, how do I know what to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's kind of like piece it apart a little bit. So the first one, how do I start, right? There's essentially two roads you can go down here. Road number one, and this is the road I advocate for, even though I didn't go down this road initially, but I wish that I had, is you get someone to help you, right? You get someone who knows. And so this would be like a coach or like a trainer or something like that. Someone who knows, who seems to know, like who has, speaks with like confidence and has authority and like can teach you, right? You're looking for an educator. It's like, you can get a coach, and the reason I advocate for that is because it's the shortest path to your goal. Like, you don't have to like weed through information or like try to figure out like, is this right, and do test and check. Because if they...
Plus, I just want to say, I don't think a lot of people do like the test and check. Like, I feel like
that's true.
A lot of girls, or I don't know, like for myself, I know like I would go to the gym and be like, oh, well, I saw this one person suggest this, and then I do that and I'm like, I just continue doing that and you don't really see results.
Sure.
So I feel like getting a coach honestly is the best thing you can do, because a lot of people don't want to go through the test and check. They're just
that's true.
going with one thing.
So it's like, get a coach. That's the fastest path, whether you're in business, whether you're in fitness, whether you're in like trying to improve your finances, whatever. Like, getting a coach is a knowledgeable coach, right? Not someone who's just trying to like manipulate you, but a knowledgeable coach who's not going to gatekeep you and will teach you. That's the fastest path to an outcome. And we do this all the time. And so I don't like, some people are pretty resistant to it, but it's like a lot of people pay to go to school, right? It's like, what are your professors? Those are your coaches for the topic. And they're there to transfer information to you faster than what you could learn if you were out, in the wild doing it, right? So I always recommend getting a coach, even though I didn't do that. And honestly, that was just a financial thing. Like, when I started, I was young, I didn't have a bunch of money, and there wasn't a prevalence of coaches that were affordable at that time. It's like, you bought a top level coach for $5,000 for like 4 months of training, or you went to like a gym personal trainer who you didn't know if they actually know. No offense to gym personal trainers, I was one, but sometimes there's like, you don't know, right? Their credibility isn't there. So that's route number one. Route number two is you can do test and check. And this is a lot of trial and error, and that's what I did. But I'm a little bit different, and you can probably agree to that. Like, I'm an autodidact, so I like teaching myself things, and I will willingly do the test and check, right? It's like, I'm going to try this thing for 12 weeks and see what results I have, and then I'm going to try this thing for 12 weeks and see what results I have, and I'm going to do a comparative analysis and be like, okay, so this one was better, so I'm going to continue to do this, and then I'm going to try something different, then try something different. The problem is it took me a long time to build a knowledge base that was really effective by doing that.
Yeah.
And so...
and only certain brains work that way. Like mine, I never could have done that and been successful like that. Would have just been a joke.
Yeah. So you got to know yourself too, right?
Yeah.
So you can do test and check. The other thing that you can do with that is you want to look at the people who have actually built top tier physiques, right? It's like, if they are professional, right? They're a professional bodybuilder, they're a professional competitor, or they're professional in the sport, that whatever, like if you're endurance or whatever, look at what they're doing, right? Because they have coaches, right? Like, top pros have coaches, and it's like, look at what they're doing and you can mimic it to an extent. Rather than like going to the influencer like that is 170 pounds, 5'9", 170 pounds, who's like lean, but is probably just got out of high school and just has that kind of like lean high school body with a little bit of muscle. Like, why would you take their advice over you know, like Chris Bumstead, right? Like classic physique, Mr. Olympia. Like, what does he do? How does he build his physique? Watch his videos, figure out like what he's doing, and start implementing them on yourself, and then test and check. It's like, go to the top physiques and do what they're doing. Like, you wouldn't go to, you wouldn't go to like someone who's like barely scraping by financially, like who isn't like, you know, wealthy, to learn how to be wealthy, right? It's like, you'd go to the people who are wealthy. So it's like, if I had the choice between watching what a billionaire does and watching what someone who makes $30,000 a year does to teach me how to be wealthy, which one am I going to do, right? I'm going to go to the credibility. I'm going to go to the billionaire. It's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
And follow their tracks, because they've already been through all of the kind of like ups and downs, trial and error, and they figured it out. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, look at the top physiques, pay attention to what they're doing, kind of keep like a log of what they're doing, and then duplicate it. And then you can make tweaks based on yourself. So I would say the biggest mistakes are people are like looking at these influencers who, a lot of them are just naturally, like a lot of it's just like genetic. Like, they're not big, they're not like big guys, right? Or they're ladies with just like natural glutes, and they're duplicating their exercises or their routines or their food, and they're wondering why they're not getting results. It's like, because you're not learning from someone who really knows, you know what I mean? Like, they haven't gone through the same level that like an IFBB pro has, right? Or, you know, someone who's actually putting on a lot of size if you're a guy, or something like that. So that's my general recommendation. It's like, you can do copy and test and check, or the best way to do it is find like an educated coach that has the priority to educate you rather than just retain you and retain your money. So
and then as far as like knowing like, well, do I need to, like, I guess, how do you know when you need to cut or when you need, like, starting off? If I'm like, do I need to lose weight? Do I need to focus on putting on weight? How do you know that?
So I would say for most people who are just starting their gym journey, most people are a little fluffier than what they want to be. Like, not everybody, but most people. And so if you're starting in a state where you have some excess body fat, lose the body fat first. Okay, like, let's focus on getting lean first. And the reason for that is multifold, right? So reason number one, it's like, it's easy because it's fast to lose body fat. And so fast by comparison to building tissue. It's like, you can lose body fat at a rate of like 1 to 2 pounds a week pretty comfortably. And so you'll see quick results. So like, if someone's like you, right, they're 5'9", they're female, and let's say they weigh 160, right? They can get down to like 140 in 10 weeks, right? And that's a big physical change. And why I say that is because then that helps you build habituation, right? It's like, because you're getting positive feedback every week by seeing results in the mirrors, results on the scale. And so the first goal is to build habituation by having a high positive feedback loop, and getting lean does that. And not only that, but it's like, getting lean is healthier, right? It's like, it's healthier to be lean than overweight. And so if you can get lean first, that's what I recommend. And then after you get lean, and what I mean by lean, I'll give you some like general markers. For women, this is typically like around 20% body fat. For men, 20% or lower, but 20% is kind of like my cutoff, but it's not like a hard cutoff, but like 20%-ish. And then men getting below 15% body fat. If you can kind of hit those markers, then you can focus on building muscle after that. And so how can you know if you're, you know, next question is like, how do you know that, right? You don't need to go get like an expensive DEXA scan or like calipers or a bod pod or anything like that. You can literally just Google them and search like male or female body fat percentages, and it'll bring up like a chart of what each body looks like at, you know, X amount of body fat percentage, and just do a visual comparison. Like, we're not doing this for like scientific measuring purposes. Like, if you're 1 to 2% off, doesn't really matter. It's like, just get close. So you can do that. And so get lean first and then build. And then if you're like skinny fat, that's a pretty common question I get to kind of build on this. Like, if you're, you know, pretty slim, but you definitely are just have a lot of fat, like not like a lot of fat and that you're overweight, but it's just like, you don't have a lot of muscle tissue.
I was gonna say, I feel like just kind of more jiggly. Like, I feel like even like I was 5'9" and like 125 when I started working out, but it was like my legs were like very thin, but no muscle whatsoever. Like, it was just kind of like, it's all jiggly. Everything's
jiggly. That's a good one. That's a good way to put it. So if that's you, then I would focus on building first. So get lean first if you have a little bit to lose. If you're kind of like skinny fat, or like you just have a little bit of jiggle, then focus on building first, and that'll be the fastest path to do it. So as far as getting lean, I always recommend like a 300 to 500 calorie a day deficit. As far as building tissue, I always recommend a 300 to 500 calorie surplus. I don't recommend going less than that, even though there's a lot of recommendations out there in kind of like fitness world to do that. And the reason for that is that I'm looking at people realistically, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm not looking in this like utopia where it's like they're going to be on their meals every single day. It's like in the real world, like you're going to have days where you're off, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to create a little bit of cushion on either side by having a little bit more of a deficit and a little bit more of a surplus. That if you have an off day, you're still in a deficit at the end of the week, or you're still in a surplus at the end of the week. Like that example I said prior, you go to brunch, and you eat a chicken fried steak and it's 1,500 calories. Like, well, if you're in a 500 calorie day deficit, that's going to blow out your deficit for the whole week.
Yeah.
You're still going to lose some body fat. So that's kind of like some general guidelines.
And then as far as like, what do you suggest, like starting with like strength training or cardio?
Yeah.
Like,
so both. I always suggest strength training is like the number one way to change your physique for the long term, right? So it's like it's going to give you the physique that you want, whether it's male or female, unless you're looking for like something that's not typical, right? It's like I'm looking for like an endurance runner's physique, right? It's like strength training is probably not going to build that, or I'm looking for like, I don't know, I would say that's the most common one, so we'll just kind of stop there. So strength training is the thing that's going to shape your physique, let's put it that way. So it's like, ladies, you want curves, right? You want nice glutes, you want like a nice back, you want nice legs, that strength training will give you that. Fellas, it's like you want a big chest, you want big arms, you want a nice back, like strength training is going to give you that. And so they should put the majority of their energy into strength training, and then if they're like in a state where they're trying to lose fat, they can do cardio after that. And they can do like 20 minutes starting out, but use like least effective dose. So it's like, you don't want to just like titrate up cardio really fast, because it can cut into your muscle, right? Like your body's going to eventually start catabolizing muscle for energy, the muscle that's on your body. And so you want to use least effective dose. So it's like start at 20 minutes and slowly increase it as necessary. Like if you stop losing weight, increase your cardio a little bit. And even in reverse, like if you're trying to build muscle, strength training plus a little bit of cardio.
and you think cardio at the end or beginning of workout?
At the end of workout, because you want to take like yourself with your most energy and put it towards the thing that's going to make the biggest change, right? So it's like in the beginning of the workout, you have the most energy, you have the ability to retain intensity, and so you should drive that towards lifting, because that's ultimately what's going to give you the physique that you want. And then when you're a little bit less energy, you can just use the cardio for like calorie burn essentially.
That makes sense. As far as like soreness goes when you first start working out, like how do you really deal with that? Because I feel like that's a pretty big turnoff. Like I trained hamstrings for the first time like heavily, and I couldn't even they were sore for like a week, and that was like so miserable, and I already have to like train them again. I'm like, I don't even want to do it.
Yeah, I get it. So number one, it's like look at the light at the end of the tunnel, right? It's like you're not going to be that sore forever. Like as you get more conditioned and your tissue gets more conditioned to doing the work, that soreness period will decrease. Number two, soreness, like there's only a couple like things you can really do to actually meaningfully impact soreness. And number one, it's like, what does your nutrition look like, right? So what does your nutrition look like 24 hours up until your workout? Are you on point with your protein? Are you on point with your carbs and your fats and your calories? And then what does your nutrition look to 24 hours after training, right? Kind of this 48-hour block around training determines to quite a large extent like how you're going to recover and how fast you're going to recover. And so nutrition is a big lever that you can pull. The other lever is sleep, right? So like we do the majority of our repair in our bodies when we're sleeping. And so make sure that you're getting adequate sleep, 8 to 9 hours a night. If you can take a nap, take a nap. You know what I mean? Like we're going to be doing the majority of our recovery while we're sleeping. And so those are the main levers that people need to pull. And you can do some other things, like you can do like self-massage, right? Or you can use like the Theragun. We have a Theragun. That's helpful. It's not necessarily going to typically, at least per the research, it's not going to like decrease the duration of soreness, but it might make it more comfortable, right?
Yeah.
It might kind of like lessen like how you feel about it, like the pain, let's say. I do not recommend taking like a Tylenol, ibuprofen, NSAID or anything, because those are anti-inflammatories, and part of what drives a training response, i.e. build muscle, is the inflammation after soreness or after training. So you don't want to knock that out. And so you can do like self-massage, you can do like a Theragun. There's about Graston, like that tool-assisted massage, cupping. We do a lot of like cupping and Graston just to deal with like muscle tension and stuff around here. And we just like get it on Amazon. You don't have to go to a practitioner, although they're going to know better than you are, right? But you can kind of do self-cupping and self-Graston, but that typically doesn't decrease the duration of the soreness by very much. And so a lot of it's just like you have to get conditioned. So.
And bringing movement to the area too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So we'll go for like walks, right? So it's like we went for a walk 2 days ago, yesterday, whatever it was. I went for like a long walk, and what the movement does is it drives in new blood and nutrients to the area, right? And that's helpful to recover the area. So yeah, getting light movement to the area is also helpful.
Yeah, 100%. That's helped me significantly.
Stretching too is another thing that people say.
Yeah.
Stretching is kind of like the massage thing. Like it might make you feel better temporarily, but you'll notice that after you stretch, you'll feel a little bit better, but you're gonna be sore again, like within 30 minutes to an hour. Like it's not gonna speed up like the recovery, but it can give you relief temporarily.
Yeah, I mean, I like doing that when I'm like sore and having to like still work out other body parts, and I'm like, this still hurts.
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, the stretching is like, I feel like the best time is before you go work the next body part. How important is like technique, form? I feel like very like type A people or like the perfectionists really get stuck on the like, my form isn't perfect.
Yeah. Form is perfect like to prevent injury, right? But what I always tell people is like the type A people, I have that pretty often, is like, I can't increase weight without my form degrading, right? The problem is like, if you're so worried about form that you can't do progressive overload, i.e. increase weight, increase reps, do some sort of like progressive overload, then you're never gonna get anywhere. And really, to some extent, the only way to increase form under load is to work under load, right? So it's like, let's say like you were gonna do like 135 pounds on the squat, right? And it's like you feel like your form is not perfect at 135 pounds, but it's perfect at 95 pounds. It's like, well, how do you expect to ever get better form at 135 pounds without doing 135 pounds? And so this is not me saying go out and just like screw form, it doesn't matter. But it's like, as long as you're 80 to 90%, you're gonna be okay. And so don't be like so rigid on the form that you don't get gains. You know what I mean? Like you don't progress. And so, and some of you are doing that where it's like, I feel like I can't do anymore because my form's not perfect. It's like, your form is never gonna be perfect under load until you do the load. And so you need to train your body under load in order to improve the form. And this is true of like powerlifting, right? So it's like in powerlifting, it's like when you're at the higher intensity levels and you're lifting heavier weights than what you typically have lifted, your form isn't going to be perfect. But as you continue to lift that, your form improves because you get stronger in the areas you need to be stronger. Yeah. And so if you just stay at the same weight, you're never going to have better form at an increased weight.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, like, that is another nice thing about having a coach is like, if you feel like you're not sure if this form is like too far off track, like having someone there who can kind of be a guy to be like, no, that's fine, that still is okay, keep moving up, is helpful as well. Yeah, I have like quite a few clients who like film themselves and like send a video and be like, okay, make this adjustment, make this adjustment, and it's like, are they 100%? No, but they're like 90%, and it's like, that's fine under the load that they're working under. Yeah. So how like starting off going to the gym or like trying to change eating habits and things like that, like everyone has a busy life, like everybody. How, like, what are some like tips to try and like incorporate that in to where you can like start those things, but it's not so overwhelming?
This is definitely like a common question for people who are busy, right? And as someone who's been exceptionally busy for the last 6 years, so for the last 6 years, I was a medical executive and I was working on average 60 to 100 hours a week. And I'm not gonna lie, my training suffered to some extent during there, and my nutrition suffered a little bit, but it was still a priority enough that I didn't just lose everything, you know what I mean? And so this is what I'll say kind of like as a general, like overarching concept. So what you give priority to will reign. Right? So it's like, if you give priority to training and nutrition above, like sitting at home and watching Netflix, right? Like when you get home after a long day, or, like going out to lunch with your friends instead of going to the gym, right? Like during work or whatever, that's what you're going to make progress on, whatever you give priority to. And so some of you, in fact, I would say a lot of you who are having this time problem, are what you're really having is a priority listing problem. And it's just like, well, the gym is important because I don't like the way that I look, or because I want to look better, but it's not important enough to sacrifice this thing, right? And so some of you need to do this shuffling of priority list, and because your priority list reigns. And so that's number one. It's like, is training actually important to you? Is your physique and reaching your goals actually important to you? If they are, then you need to make the conscious decision to move it up on your priority list. Yeah. And this meant for me especially, is like, okay, so I am going to carve out 10 minutes every 3 hours at work and protect it to have my meal, right? And during that time, it's like maybe I have some little micro meetings with people where I can eat and have a meeting at the same time, which you experienced quite a bit. It's like, okay, so I have 10 minutes, I'm not like doing anything on the computer. This is my protected time. I'm gonna call like an employee in and we're gonna have a conversation while I eat. And so it's like, I'm taking care of business, but I'm still maintaining my priority.
Yeah.
For those of you who work in like, I don't know, like places where you can't do that to some extent, then you're just gonna have to do your best with the time that is allotted, right?
Yeah.
I was blessed in that I was an executive, so I had control over my time blocks. But like if you're an employee and like maybe you're doing construction or you're like in the medical field and you're a nurse or something like that, it's like you just have to fit it in where you can. So priority listing is number one. Number two, you have to be prepared, right?
Yeah.
The busier your life is, the more preparation you have to do. And so when my life was really busy and I was trying to, during periods trying to make physique goals, it's like I had to be prepared to a T, right? It's like I have to have my meals with me. I have to make my meals. And sometimes that meant I catered meals, right? It's like I had like beef teriyaki catered, and I just put them in meal containers and took them to work.
Yeah.
So it's like I had my meals, I took them to work, and all I had to do then was walk to the break room, pop in the microwave for 2 minutes, and sit down for 5 minutes and eat a meal. It's like 5 minutes over the course of 8 hours, 2 or 3 times, is not going to make a significant difference in your work performance. Like it's just not. And so if you can find time to squeeze it in, that's the best thing to do. But being prepared is so key. And this is where a lot of you are going to struggle, is because you don't do the preparation and you kind of fly by the seat of your pants. When you have a busy lifestyle, that just doesn't work. And so you have to be prepared. And there's some tools you can do, right? You can order meal company meals if you can afford that, right? You can order like catering meals. That was cheaper. That's what I did a lot of.
Yeah.
Like catered like beef and rice meals, and just partition them into containers rather than like spending 3 hours on a weekend prepping. And so you kind of just have to like be a little bit flexible with what you do to make sure that you can actually be prepared. So be prepared and adjust your priority, and that's like those are the two biggest things. And then some of you, like I know some of you work like 12-hour shifts. That's a common one I've gotten to. Like the nurses, like I work 3 12s or 4 12s, or because I pick up a shift or whatever. Well, that to me tells me you have 4 days a week where you can be really on point if you work 3 12s, right? And so it's like maybe on 4 days a week you're really on point, and the 3 days a week maybe you don't train, but your nutrition's on point, right? So it's like you just have to, if you want it, you'll find a way, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I say priority listings number one. It's like if you really want to look good, and it's like top 3 priority listing, it's like you're gonna look good. If it's down at like 5, 6, 7, 8 below comfort and ease and all these things, you're probably not gonna have it.
Yeah.
So
Plus, I don't know, just like I never leave the house without a snack. Like that's why, because I know like otherwise I'm either gonna not eat or I'm gonna eat something I shouldn't. Because I'm like I need food more often than like you do. And getting creative with like we do cardio and we do strength training, but like I don't want to be at the gym in the evening for like 2 hours doing all of that. And so like in the morning, like oftentimes we'll get up and like do our cardio before work. And then
or in the evening.
Yeah,
right?
we're in the evening, like once we get home.
7:30, we're kind of winding down. 8 o'clock, we'll go for a walk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess more in the summer. In the winter, we couldn't obviously do that as much. But
yeah, that's true.
I guess what I forgot what I was going to ask you.
That's okay. You figure that out, and I'll talk a little bit more about like fitting in your schedule where you kind of figure it out.
Okay.
So the other thing that I'll say, like with fitting in your schedule, is like just be really strict on protecting your times, right? Like when it's time for you to train, it's time for you to train. Don't let someone else divert it. You know what I mean? And so, and some of you like have kids, right? And that can be difficult with kids, but it's like you just need to lay out your time and protect it. Like don't let people divert you, right? It's like if in the morning time is time for you to train and that's what you're gonna do, protect it at all costs, right? It's like say no, right? That's the biggest thing. It's like say no to the things that are gonna get in the way of that. If the evening is that, say no. If over lunch is that, say no. You have permission to say no to the things that are lower on your priority list, right? And so it's like take the initiative to do so.
And then how do you know like that you're covering all parts of your body, or like when you're at the gym, like how do you create a workout plan program for yourself kind of thing?
Yeah. So basically it's like you need to have, let me kind of start like at the fundamentals, right? It's like you have a certain amount of body parts, right? So you have chest, you have delts, you have bis and tris, you have back, right? And I divide back into two. So I have like back width, right? And that's like vertical pulling movements. And then you have back thickness, and that's horizontal pulling movements. And then you have quads, hams, glutes, and calves, right? Those are your major muscle groups. So there's a ton of like kind of already known splits out there. So a split is like how you divide those muscle groups up to work them throughout the week, right? So it's like push-pull legs is like a pretty well-known split. It's like one day you're gonna do push movements, so this will work like chest, delts, and triceps. Those are all push movements. And then one day you're gonna work pull movements, right? And so this would be like back and biceps, and then one day you're gonna work legs. And so that's called a split. It's just like how you divide those muscle groups up to work them. And so you wanna find like a good split for you that works well for you. And a split is only over a course of 1 week, right? So it's a 1 week split. And so it might be push-pull legs if you have 6 days, right, during the week to work out, or it might be push-pull legs if you have 3 days, or let's say you have 4 days, you can do like an upper body day, a lower body day, an upper body day, a lower body day. If you're more like into bodybuilding, then you want like more of kind of like what's called like a bro split or a pro split, which is more like I do chest on a day, I do arms on a day, I do delts on a day, I do back on a day, I do legs on a day. So it's like kind of like one body part basically per day. For me, what I like to do is I like to have like a split where I cover my entire body in 4 days, and then I have 2 what's called improvement days. And basically like what an improvement day is like it's a day where you're going to do extra work on the body parts you either want to emphasize or you want to catch up because they're weak, right? Like they lag behind. And so for me, my split's a little bit unorthodox, but it works really well. I do like chest and bis on Monday, and then I'll do back. I'll do chest and bis on Monday, I'll do shoulders and tris on Tuesday, I'll do back on Wednesday, and then I'll do chest and bis again, that's improvement day 1 on Thursday because of time spacing, so I get enough rest. And then Friday legs, and then Saturday shoulders and tris. And so I'm hitting shoulders and tris twice, and I'm hitting back or chest and bis twice, because those are the areas that I need to emphasize and improve. Like my chest has bad genetics, so I have to train it twice as much as everything else to keep pace. And so I hit chest twice a week, and then my my bis and tris tend to lag behind like my back and legs, and so I need to hit those twice a week. And so you basically want to create like a split that gives you your ideal physique, right? And so like a general split like push-pull legs is great just to put on first mass, right? It's like just to get some mass put on. But as you get into it, you want to start creating the physique that you're after, right? So it's like you want to start sculpting the physique that you're after. It's like, oh, I need a little bit more here, and I need a little bit more here, and I want a little bit more here. And that's where like the 4-day split with 2 improvement days is really beneficial. And that's why you see like top bodybuilders doing that kind of split consistently, where they're doing a body part a day and they're doubling up on body parts that need improvement. And so that's what I do. But you don't have to do that. Like you can just do push-pull legs, you can do upper, lower, upper. Kind of the general principles that you want to live in is like hypertrophy, which is like the scientific word for muscle building, is do 6 to 15 reps. Okay, so repetitions like 1, 2, 3, like a bench press, 4. Those are repetitions with 10 to 20 sets taken to failure per body part per week. So that means like 10 sets taken to failure on chest, 10 sets taken to failure on delts, 10 sets taken to failure on bis, tris, for each body part. That's kind of like, I would say that's like beginner to intermediate. You can do a little bit less than 10 if you're beginner and you're finding yourself like sore for so long that you can't train, maybe do 6, right? But kind of like the general range is 10 to 20. And then just divide up your body parts throughout the week and do that. A common question that I get is like, what is failure, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I know that I'm at failure? It's like, well, if I'm doing bench press and I'm on rep like 9 and I'm like barely able to get it up, right? And I'm struggling, and I can either get it up or I don't get it up, that's failure, right? So it's like the last rep that you can do where you can't do another rep, that's failure. And I should unpack sets too, because a lot of people don't know, like beginners don't know what that is. So
I was one of them.
yeah, so you have reps, right? It's like if I'm doing bench press, 1 rep, 2 rep, 3 reps, 4 reps. If I do 10 of those and then I rest and do another 10, those are sets. So sets are groupings of reps. So it's like do 10 reps, wait, that's set number 1. Do 10 reps, wait, that's set number 2. So sets are groupings of reps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that confused me for like a year.
You're not alone. Yeah, the gym lingo can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I guess last question will be, is a cool down warm up important?
Sure. So I think that as you get a little bit older, it's probably beneficial to get some blood flow, right? So like even if that's just like walking on the treadmill, just kind of like some general blood flow. But if you're like in your 20s, if you're like in your like early to mid 30s, you can pretty much do a warm up by doing the exercise you're doing, the exercise you're gonna complete as the warm up. And so what do I mean by that? Like, let's say you're gonna go in and you're gonna do barbell back squat. It's like what you can do is you can do barbell back squat, but with less weight. So it's like, let's say you're gonna work up to a plate on each side, like 135. It's like maybe your first set, you just do the bar, right? And you do 10 reps of that. And then the second set, you do the bar plus 10s on each side. And then the third set, you do the bars plus 25. And then now you're at working sets and you put on your 135, okay? So when I'm giving like set recommendations, that's working sets, okay? So working sets are full weight sets. So even though she did 3 warm-up sets, the bar, 10s on each side, 25s on each side, those don't count towards sets because those are warm-ups. And I always recommend that people do dynamic warm-ups with the exercise that they're actually doing, because you know you could like lay down on or like get down on all fours and do those kind of like fire hydrants, you know, where you like bring your leg up to activate your glutes prior to doing squats. But the problem is like that's not the movement you're actually going to execute. And so your mind to muscle connection on your glutes with that versus your mind to muscle connection on doing the dynamic warm-ups with the actual exercise, it's better to do the dynamic with the exercise, because that's the movement you're actually going to execute. So for most people, until like, I would say until you get for sure just like kind of over 30s, you can pretty much just use the exercise itself as a warm-up, right? And don't just do one set, right? Do like 2, maybe 3 warm-up sets and then get into your working sets. And you don't have to do it on every exercise. Like if you have the rest of the day's legs, you can do those 2 to 3 warm-up sets, get into your squats, and then you can just move on to your other leg exercises and start doing working sets. So as far as cool downs, if you want to, like I don't really have like a stance on that, like whether or not you need to cool down after a workout. What I will say is you should never stretch to warm up. Okay, like you don't stretch to warm up, you warm up to stretch. So that means you stretch after exercise, you don't stretch before exercise.
Yeah, the lectures I've gotten on this.
Yeah, because I'll tell you the reason behind it, because like actually what they've shown is that number one, stretching before training with weights does not decrease injury potential. In fact, in some instances it can increase injury potential, and it makes you weaker during the actual lift. And so it's like if our goal is to put on muscle tissue and build tissue, we don't want to be weaker. And so you can do your exercises, and then if mobility is important, do it after, when your muscles are warm. So don't stretch to warm up to stretch.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. So first podcast is done. If you guys have questions or you have topic ideas that you want covered or you have feedback or whatever, put those in the comments. We do look at the comments, and my goal is to put out content that you guys want, right? So it's like I'm not just putting out content that I want to put out. I'm putting out content that I've been asked questions before, because my goal is to educate you guys. And so if you have questions, don't be shy, put them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them for you guys. We can maybe do a podcast on them, or you might be able to catch me on like a TikTok on them. You can find podcasts on YouTube, Spotify, and Twitter, now known as X. So you can follow any of the accounts on there. They're all Training Truths. And then TikTok is like the short form, is like my short form content, where it's like I can sit down for 3 minutes and like digest some information. And then Instagram will be like more like lifestyle, just kind of like day in the life with me and Bethany, if you want to go on there too. But as far as podcasts, it's YouTube, Twitter, and then Spotify. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time.